Xiaolang Jiang had 24 hours before his life would change forever. He didn't know it yet, but in exactly one day, he would be standing in handcuffs at San Jose Airport, his future obliterated. His crime? Stealing secrets from the most paranoid, most powerful tech company on Earth, Apple. This isn't a story about corporate espionage in the abstract. This is about one engineer, one choice, and one surveillance system so sophisticated that every keystroke, every file access, every hesitation was being watched, recorded, analyzed. Zhang thought he was careful. He thought he had planned the perfect exit. But Apple's security apparatus had been watching him for weeks, building a case brick by brick, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This is the story of how Silicon Valley's most secretive company caught a spy in its midst, and what it reveals about the invisible war being fought in the shadows of the tech industry. To understand how this happened, you need to understand who Xiaolang Jiang was and who he wanted to be. Born in China, educated in the United States, Jiang was a hardware engineer specializing in circuit board design. In 2015, Apple recruited him to work on something extraordinary, the Special Projects Group, not just any team. The team building Apple's autonomous vehicle project, codenamed Project Titan. He was one of thousands of anonymous engineers. Brilliant but invisible. Living the Silicon Valley dream, good salary, prestige, access to world-changing technology. He had everything most engineers could want. But here's what Jiang also was: ambitious beyond his station, frustrated by the pace of advancement, and watching colleagues leave for Chinese startups with equity packages that could change their families' futures for generations. In 2018, Jiang took paternity leave. His wife had just given birth to their child. He traveled to China ostensibly to visit family, to introduce his newborn to grandparents. But something else happened on that trip. Jiang met with recruiters from X Motors, a Chinese electric vehicle startup backed by Alibaba. They weren't just offering him a job. They were offering him significance, a leadership role, equity, the chance to be more than a cog in Apple's machine. They wanted his expertise, and they wanted it fast. The offer was intoxicating. Return to China, help build the future of Chinese autonomous vehicles, become wealthy, become important. There was just one problem. Everything Jiang knew belonged to Apple. Before we go further, you need to understand what Jiang was up against. Apple doesn't just protect its secrets, it's built an entire corporate culture around paranoia and compartmentalization. Employees are assigned to projects without knowing the full scope. Badge access is restricted to specific floors, specific rooms, specific hours. Internal networks are monitored constantly, every file access logged, every database query recorded, every email scanned for keywords. Even meetings about future products require special clearance. Non-disclosure agreements are so extensive they're almost comical. And overseeing it all is a dedicated security team called Global Security, staffed by former law enforcement, former intelligence operatives, former NSA analysts. This isn't a tech company. This is a fortress disguised as a campus. Project Titan wasn't just any secret, it was Apple's moonshot. Billions invested, hundreds of engineers, partnerships with manufacturers around the world. The technology: LiDAR sensor arrays, custom circuit boards, machine learning systems for real-time decision-making, proprietary battery technology. The kind of innovation that could define the next decade of transportation. Jiang had access to circuit board schematics, sensor specifications, testing protocols, the DNA of Apple's automotive ambitions. And Apple security knew exactly who had access to what. Here's what Jiang didn't fully comprehend. From the moment he joined Project Titan, he was being monitored. Not because he was suspicious, because everyone was monitored. Network forensics, tracking every file he opened. Badge swipes recording his movements through the building. Email systems flagging unusual behavior. HR monitoring travel patterns, sudden behavioral changes, any deviation from normal routines. Apple's security wasn't reactive. It was predictive. And the moment Zhang decided to steal those secrets, the algorithm noticed. So when did Xiaolang Zhang become a thief? Was it the moment he met with X Motors recruiters? The moment he accepted their offer? The moment he first copied a file to a personal device? Or was it earlier, the moment he allowed himself to imagine a different future? Imagine his thoughts in those weeks after returning from China. The rationalization. Everyone takes knowledge with them when they leave, right? It's just experience. The justification. Apple has thousands of engineers. They won't even notice. These are just notes. The greed. This could change everything for my family. My child will grow up wealthy. The nationalism. Why should American companies dominate? China deserves this technology too, but beneath all those justifications, fear. Because Zhang knew exactly what he was planning. In April 2018, Zhang informed his manager he was resigning. Standard 2-week notice. Professional, unremarkable on the surface. But in those 2 weeks, Zhang became frantic. He began accessing databases he'd never touched before. Files outside his normal project scope. He downloaded circuit board schematics, pulled up internal technical documents, screenshotted proprietary designs. His behavior was erratic, desperate. He was trying to grab everything he could before the window closed. Zhang was smart. He didn't just email files to himself, too obvious, too traceable. He used AirDrop to transfer files to his personal iPhone. He took photographs of his computer screen with his phone, capturing designs and specifications that couldn't be easily downloaded. He connected personal hard drives to company computers during late-night sessions when he thought no one was watching. He backed everything up to his wife's personal laptop. He thought he was being clever, untraceable, sophisticated. But every single action left a digital fingerprint. Every AirDrop transfer logged by the network. Every photograph captured on security cameras. Every external device flagged by endpoint security systems. Every late-night session recorded and time-stamped. On April 28, 2018, Zhang's last day at Apple, he stayed late. The office was empty. Most engineers had already left for the weekend. The floor was silent except for the hum of servers and the distant sound of custodial staff. Security cameras recorded him at his desk, working frantically. His movements were quick, nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. He copied over 25 gigabytes of data, thousands of files, hundreds of proprietary documents. The complete blueprint of Apple's autonomous vehicle technology. Circuit boards that took years to design. Sensor arrays worth hundreds of millions in research. Battery management systems that represented the cutting edge of electric vehicle technology. Supplier contracts revealing Apple's entire manufacturing strategy. Then he walked out the door for the last time. His badge was deactivated behind him. Security escorted him to the parking lot. Standard procedure for departing employees with high-level access. Zhang got in his car, drove away, thinking he was free. He had no idea that Apple's security team had been building a case against him for weeks, and they were just waiting for him to make his final mistake. The moment Zhang resigned, Apple's global security team activated a protocol they'd refined over years of protecting the world's most valuable secrets. This wasn't personal. This was procedure. When employees with access to sensitive projects resign, especially to join competitors or return to China, Apple initiates what's called a departure audit. A comprehensive review designed to catch exactly what Zhang was attempting. The audit includes complete review of network access logs, forensic analysis of company device usage, email pattern analysis looking for signs of data exfiltration, badge movement tracking to identify unusual late-night access, Interviews with colleagues to detect behavioral changes. They were looking for anomalies, deviations from normal patterns, red flags that indicated an employee might be taking more than their personal belongings. And Zhang's digital footprint was screaming. Apple's investigators built their timeline with methodical precision. Week 1 after resignation notice, Zhang's database queries increased by 200%. He accessed over 2,000 files outside his normal project scope. Network logs showed massive data transfers to personal devices during hours when he should have been wrapping up his projects. Not diving deeper into new ones. Week 2 after resignation notice, security cameras caught Zhang connecting external hard drives to his workstation, a direct violation of company policy. He airdropped files to his personal iPhone 87 times in just 3 days. Colleagues reported seeing him photographing his computer screen, which he awkwardly tried to explain as documenting his work for personal portfolio purposes. Zhang's final day, 25 gigabytes of data transferred. 40% of files accessed were marked confidential, special projects. This included complete autonomous vehicle sensor schematics, battery management protocols, and supplier agreements that revealed Apple's entire manufacturing strategy for Project Titan. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, the kind of case that federal prosecutors dream about. Apple's security team faced a strategic choice: confront him immediately and arrest him for theft, or let him believe he'd succeeded and catch him in an even more damaging act, attempting to flee the country with stolen data. They chose patience. They wanted an airtight federal case that would send a message to every engineer in Silicon Valley. So they contacted the FBI. They compiled their evidence into a comprehensive brief. They prepared for a coordinated takedown. And they watched. And they waited. For Zhang, those weeks after leaving Apple must have felt like liberation. He'd done it. He'd escaped with the data. X Motors was waiting for him in Beijing. His new life, his significant life, was about to begin. He booked a flight to China. One-way ticket. Departure date, June 30th, 2018. He told his wife they were moving home. Their son would grow up in China, surrounded by family, with opportunities Zhang's own parents could never have provided. He'd be a leader, not just another anonymous engineer. X Motors sent him details about his new role: head of autonomous driving systems, office overlooking Beijing's tech district, equity package worth millions if the company went public. A title that meant something. He had no idea that Apple had already contacted the FBI, that his name was on a watch list, that his passport had been flagged in federal databases, that every day of his imagined freedom was being carefully orchestrated by investigators. Building an inescapable trap, June 27, 2018. 3 days before Zhang's flight to China, Apple's security team requested a meeting with Zhang. Routine exit interview, they said. Just some follow-up questions about his departure. Standard procedure for employees who'd worked on sensitive projects. Zhang arrived at Apple's Cupertino campus that afternoon, probably thinking this was bureaucratic formality. One last checkbox before he could close this chapter of his life. He walked into a conference room on the 3rd floor of Apple Park. Waiting for him, Apple's global security investigators and FBI agents. They didn't arrest him immediately. They talked, professional, calm, methodical. The questions started simple, almost friendly. Mr. Zhang, thank you for coming in. We just need to clarify a few things about your time on Project Titan. Can you walk us through your typical workflow? What files did you access regularly? Then the questions became more pointed. Can you explain why you accessed files from the battery team? According to our records, you worked on circuit boards. Why would you need battery management protocols? Can you tell us about these data transfers to personal devices? We have logs showing significant file movement in your final 2 weeks. Can you explain the business justification for that? We have security footage of you photographing your screen. Company policy strictly forbids this. Can you explain what you were documenting and why? Zhang tried to play it cool. Perhaps there were misunderstandings. Maybe he'd accidentally copied some files while organizing his personal work notes. The photographs could have been innocent, just documenting his projects for his portfolio. But the investigators had done their homework. They weren't guessing. They weren't fishing. They showed him logs, timestamps, screenshots from security cameras, network forensic reports that tracked every byte he'd transferred. They told him they'd requested to examine his personal devices. For his protection, they said, to clear up any misunderstandings. Zhang's hands were shaking now. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. On Zhang's personal iPhone and laptop, forensic investigators had found, with his reluctant consent, thousands of files that should never have left. Apple's secure network, detailed schematics of Apple's proprietary circuit boards, showing component placement, signal routing, power management, the kind of designs that take years and millions of dollars to perfect. Confidential supplier lists revealing which manufacturers Apple was partnering with, what components they were producing, and at what cost. Intelligence worth billions to competitors. Engineering drawings stamped Apple Confidential and special projects. Only documents that required special clearance, just to view inside Apple's own network. Technical specifications for autonomous vehicle sensors that represented the cutting edge of LiDAR and computer vision technology. Over 5,000 files in total. Some downloaded, some photographed, some transferred through airdrop, but all undeniably stolen. Zhang's defenses crumbled. According to FBI documents filed later in federal court, Zhang admitted, yes, he had taken photographs of confidential screens. Yes, he had transferred files to personal devices. Yes, he had been in negotiations with X Motors, a Chinese electric vehicle startup. Yes, he had planned to use this information in his new role, but he claimed, and would continue to claim, that he never intended to steal, only to reference for his own knowledge, to help him understand the industry better, to make him a more effective engineer, a distinction Apple's lawyers would eviscerate in court, a distinction federal prosecutors would shred in their indictment, a distinction that meant absolutely nothing. Under trade secret law, Zhang wasn't arrested that day. The FBI let him go, likely to give investigators time to build an absolutely bulletproof federal case, one that would result in maximum charges and serve as a deterrent to every other engineer considering similar betrayal. But his passport was flagged in every federal database. His movements were being monitored. His phone calls potentially intercepted. Every transaction tracked. He was already caught. The trap had already closed. He just didn't realize how. Completely. June 30th, 2018. Day of Zhang's flight to China. Incredibly, almost unbelievably, Zhang still tried to board his plane. Did he think Apple was bluffing? Did he believe the FBI didn't have enough evidence? Was it desperation, denial, or the stubborn hope that somehow he could still escape? We'll never know his thoughts as he drove to San Jose International Airport that morning. As he checked his bags, as he approached the security checkpoint with his one-way ticket to Beijing and his future at X Motors. But the moment his passport was scanned at the security checkpoint, federal agents moved in. Shalang. Zhang was arrested and charged with theft of trade secrets under the Economic Espionage Act, a federal crime, carrying up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. His dreams of significance died in a TSA checkpoint at 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Zhang's arrest sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley's Chinese engineering community. For years, There had been whispers engineers taking jobs in China, startups that seemed to have suspiciously advanced technology, recruitment efforts that felt aggressive, almost predatory. But Zhang's case was different. This was public, federal, a statement arrest designed to send a message. Zhang pleaded not guilty initially. His defense attorneys argued the information wasn't truly proprietary, it was general knowledge that any skilled engineer would possess. Never actually delivered anything to his motors, the files remained in his possession. He was just taking notes for personal reference. Common practice when engineers change jobs. Apple was making an example of him. Because of his ethnicity and his Chinese employer, this was discrimination disguised as prosecution. But federal prosecutors had an overwhelming case. Gigabytes of confidential files, clearly marked as proprietary, that John had no legitimate reason to access or retain. Clear premeditation evidenced by the X Motors negotiations that began while he was still employed at Apple. Blatant violation of explicit employment agreements and non-disclosure contracts he'd signed. Evidence of intentional concealment, the various methods he used to hide his theft from Apple's security systems. The prosecution's case was so strong that Zhang's own attorneys likely advised him he couldn't win at trial. In 2020, facing a trial he couldn't win and the possibility of a decade in federal prison, Zhang changed his plea to guilty. He admitted to one count of theft of trade secrets with the intent to benefit a foreign company. Sentencing: 120 days in federal prison, $29,000 in fines, 3 years of supervised release. Shockingly lenient by federal standards, likely the result of his cooperation with investigators, his expression of genuine remorse, and the fact that he never successfully delivered the stolen data to X Motors. But the prison sentence was almost irrelevant. The real punishment was everything else. Think about what Zhang lost. His career at one of the world's premier technology companies gone forever. His reputation in the engineering community destroyed. No tech company will ever hire him for a sensitive role again. His freedom, even 120 days in federal prison, is an eternity when you've never been incarcerated. His family stability and peace, his wife dealing with the shame, the uncertainty, the financial burden, his dream of significance. He wanted to be important, to be a leader, to matter. Instead, he became a cautionary tale. His future in the industry he'd devoted his life to over before it really began. For what? For data he never delivered. For a job he never started. For dreams of significance that turned to ashes the moment federal agents approached him in that airport. Apple released a rare, public statement. At Apple, we take the protection of our intellectual property extremely seriously. Our employees know that protecting our innovations is critical to our success. We will use all available means to defend it. Translation: we're watching. Always watching. And if you betray us, we will destroy you. Zhang wasn't an isolated incident. He was part of a pattern. 2019, another Apple engineer arrested for stealing autonomous vehicle secrets while attempting to flee to China. 2020, a former Apple employee charged with stealing trade secrets related to Apple's self-driving car project. Multiple similar cases across Silicon Valley: Google, Tesla, Uber, all involving engineers with access to sensitive technology, all involving Chinese companies as the destination. Dozens of investigations, hundreds of suspicious departures, an invisible tide of technology transfer flowing from west to east. Chinese tech companies systematically recruiting Western engineers with intellectual property access, offering not just money, but significance, leadership roles, the chance to build China's technological future. A quiet, undeclared technology Cold War playing out in hiring decisions, airport arrests, And federal courtrooms. Zhang was just one soldier caught in a much larger battle. A battle most people don't even know is happening. But it is happening. Right now. In research labs and corporate networks and the minds of ambitious engineers who believe they can navigate these dangerous waters. Most of them, like Zhang, will discover they cannot. Zhang's story isn't really about one engineer's bad decision. It's about the invisible war being fought right now at this very moment in the technology industry. A war most people don't see. A war without soldiers or battlefields in the traditional sense. A war fought with source code and circuit diagrams, with recruitment offers and equity packages, with late-night data transfers and one-way tickets. Understand the stakes. Whoever controls autonomous vehicle technology will dominate transportation for the next century. Whoever leads in artificial intelligence will shape how humanity works, communicates, and makes decisions. Whoever masters advanced manufacturing and semiconductor production will control the physical infrastructure of the digital age. These technologies aren't just profitable, they're the foundation of economic and military power for the rest of the 21st century. China knows this. America knows this, and engineers like Zhang, they're pawns in a game played by governments and corporations worth trillions of dollars. For decades, China has pursued an aggressive technology acquisition strategy, the 1,000 Talents program, systematically recruiting Western scientists and engineers with access to cutting-edge research, offering generous salaries and research funding to bring their expertise back to China. State-backed startups like X Motors, funded by companies like Alibaba and Tencent, offering compensation packages specifically designed to lure engineers away from Western tech giants. Patient, methodical development of domestic alternatives to Western technology, not through pure innovation, but through acquired knowledge, reverse engineering, and strategic intellectual property transfer. Of comprehensive industrial policy aimed at achieving technological self-sufficiency and eventually technological dominance. It's not espionage in the James Bond sense, no secret agents, no dead drops, no coded messages. It's talent recruitment weaponized for national industrial policy. It's the systematic extraction of knowledge from one economic system to another, and it's remarkably effective. The United States government has responded with increasing aggression. FBI investigations of technology theft have tripled since 2015. Special units dedicated to economic espionage and trade, secret protection, export controls on advanced semiconductors, AI systems, and quantum computing technology restricting what can be sold to Chinese companies. Heightened scrutiny of Chinese nationals working in sensitive technology roles, creating an atmosphere of suspicion that affects innocent engineers. Federal prosecutions that treat trade secret theft as a national security threat, with sentences designed to deter. We're in a Cold War, not with missiles and tanks, but with algorithms and manufacturing processes, not fought by soldiers, but by engineers who often don't realize they're combatants. And Chinese American engineers? They're caught in an impossible position, suspected by American employers who question their loyalty, pressured by Chinese recruiters who appeal to ethnic pride and family obligations, caught between two superpowers, each demanding allegiance. Their expertise both valuable and dangerous, their identity a source of suspicion. Zhang's tragedy is that he believed he could navigate these pressures alone, that he could make a choice based on personal ambition without understanding the geopolitical forces that would crush him. He thought this was about his career, his family, his significance. He discovered too late that he was being watched by forces far more powerful than he could imagine, and that his individual Choice was seen as an act in a much larger conflict. Zhang's case reveals something deeply unsettling about modern corporate power, something that should concern all of us. Whether we work in technology or not, Apple's surveillance of its employees isn't reactive. It isn't targeted at suspicious individuals. It's total. It's constant. It's algorithmic. Every digital action monitored, and log file accesses, database queries, email content, web browsing on corporate networks. Physical movements tracked via badge systems, when you arrive, where you go, how long you stay, patterns of movement through buildings, behavioral patterns analyzed by machine learning algorithms, identifying deviations from normal routines before humans would notice, potential threats identified and flagged before crimes are committed. Predictive security that assumes guilt until proven innocent. It's remarkably effective. Zhang's case proves that, but it's also a level of oversight that would make an authoritarian government jealous. Where is the line between protecting trade secrets and surveilling employees? Do engineers have any reasonable expectation of privacy in their work? Should every keystroke be logged, every file access recorded, every movement tracked? Should companies have the ability to forensically examine personal devices that connect to corporate networks, even devices used for personal communication, family photos, private matters? At what point does security become oppression? When does protection become control? Apple would argue this is necessary. Their entire business model depends on innovation protected from competitors. Without this level of security, they couldn't maintain the competitive advantage that makes them the world's most valuable company. They'd point to Zhang's case as justification, proof that these systems work, that the surveillance is warranted. But critics point out something uncomfortable. This is a private company with government-level surveillance capabilities, accountable to shareholders, not citizens, operating under corporate policy, not constitutional law, with the power to destroy lives and careers without due process, without oversight, without the protections we expect from state actors. The message to Silicon Valley employees is unmistakable. You are being watched. Always. Every moment you're connected to corporate systems. Don't think about betraying us. Don't even think about changing jobs without perfect digital hygiene. Your loyalty isn't assumed. It's monitored, measured, and algorithmically assessed. Is this the future of corporate employment? Total transparency in exchange for access to cutting-edge work? Surveillance as the price of participation in innovation? Zhang found out the answer is yes, and the price of that access is absolute obedience. So what should we make of Xiaolang Zhang? He's not a hero. Let's be clear about that. He stole proprietary information with clear intent to benefit a foreign competitor. He violated agreements he'd signed. He betrayed a company that had trusted him with their most sensitive projects. But he's also not a monster. He's a man who made a terrible choice under pressure. Pressure from family wanting to provide for his newborn son, to give him opportunities. Pressure from culture feeling the pull of his homeland, the desire to contribute to China's technological rise. Pressure from ambition wanting to be more than anonymous, to be significant, to be a leader. Pressure from recruiters who knew exactly which buttons to push, which dreams to promise. How many of us, offered significance and wealth, would resist? How many of us, feeling invisible and replaceable in massive corporate structures, wouldn't be tempted to take something we believe we've earned through our labor and expertise? How many of us, facing the choice between loyalty to an employer and opportunity for our families, would choose differently? Zhang's crime was real, but his motivations were heartbreakingly human. And Apple? They followed the law, protected their assets, did exactly what shareholders would demand and what their fiduciary duty required. They built a security system that works with brutal efficiency, but there's something chilling about the perfection of it. The algorithmic detection that flagged Zhang's behavior before humans even looked. The patient surveillance that watched him commit his crime in real time, recording everything. The perfectly timed trap that let him believe he was free before destroying him at the moment of maximum legal exposure. Zhang never stood a chance, not because he wasn't smart, he was brilliant, not because he wasn't careful, he tried to be, but because he was fighting a system designed specifically to catch people exactly like him, a system with unlimited resources, legal authority, and technological sophistication beyond what any individual can comprehend or evade. This case forces us to ask uncomfortable questions that don't have easy answers. In a world where corporations wield nation-state level power, what are our rights as employees, as citizens, as individuals? In a technological Cold War between superpowers, are engineers combatants who deserve punishment, or casualties caught between forces beyond their control? When does protecting innovation and intellectual property become surveillance dystopia? How much power should private companies have over individuals' lives and futures? These questions don't have simple answers. Maybe they shouldn't. Xiaoling Zhang sits somewhere today, career destroyed, dreams shattered, forever marked as the engineer who betrayed Silicon Valley. He served his 120 days, paid his fine, lives under supervised release with conditions that restrict his freedom and opportunities. He was caught at an airport with a one-way ticket and a hard drive full of secrets, but what he really had was a choice we all face in different forms, in different contexts. How much of ourselves do we sell for significance? How much do we compromise for opportunity? Where is the line between ambition and betrayal? Between loyalty and self-interest? Between following rules and following dreams? Zhang crossed that line, and Apple made sure the entire tech industry watched. As he paid the price, the invisible war continues. Surveillance deepens. The tension between innovation and espionage grows more complex. And somewhere, right now, another engineer is facing a similar choice, looking at a job offer from a Chinese startup. Thinking about the files they could take, wondering if they'll be smart enough, careful enough, lucky enough to avoid Zhang's fate. Most won't be, because in this war, the house always wins, and the house is always watching. This is just one story in the invisible war being fought in Silicon Valley. There are dozens more, hundreds of investigations, thousands of engineers caught between loyalty and ambition, between countries and corporations. If this story opened your eyes to something you didn't know was happening, hit that like button. If you want to see more investigations into the hidden world of tech espionage, subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, do you think Zhang deserved what happened to him? Is Apple's surveillance justified? Where should the line be drawn between corporate security and employee privacy? This conversation is just beginning. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay questioning. And remember, in the world of technology, someone is always watching.